Okay, after the both great and horrible reception of the last horror book review, I feel like it would be necessary to make another, and hopefully keep it on the channel this time. I feel like it would also be great to do another book in the same genre, which is splatterpunk. If you don't know what splatterpunk is, don't worry, because even after the last book that I did, which was in that genre, I didn't know what it meant either. Google describes splatterpunk as horror that challenges the modern horror book's meek and subtle horror by using extreme gore and sexual violence in a counterculture literature movement. Which, from a few of these books I've read, yeah, that fits. The book we're going to discuss now is called Playground, a book by an author named Aaron Beauregard, who is hopefully not a bully that decides to copyright strike videos. I mean, look at him. He looks like a pretty chill guy, doesn't he? If you were just so happened to glance at this book in a bookstore, you might think it's a kid's book. By just glancing at the cover, it has big, colorful, blocky letters, and it says Playground. A blonde-haired, pigtailed girl stands on top of a big metal slide, so you might mistake it for a kid's book. But God help anyone that picks it up and thinks it's a kid's book. Look a little closer at the cover and see that although there is a child on a slide, there's a river of blood pouring down the slide with buzzsaws sticking up from the slide. The implication of child death is literally on the cover. So why watch this video if it's just another splatterpunk book? Well, surprisingly, this book has a really good story and a pretty good message. Unlike the last book I read, where it was gory and didn't make me feel good at the end, by the end of this splatterpunk book, I was genuinely smiling. I actually really enjoyed it. It still has horrible gore and blood and sexual stuff, but by the end, I was satisfied and I felt good. It has characters I genuinely liked and was rooting for. However, like other splatterpunk books, it has characters that do horrible and despicable things that I hated. There's also a few illustrations in the book as well, and I will put those on the screen on the pages that they appear. Like all video essays on this channel, I'm going to break up this video into 3 parts. The first is the intro, which you are listening to right now. Then the summary, which is the summary of the book, and then finally the analysis. If you just want to get to the analysis, there's a timestamp in the description for that. However, before we get to all of that, I highly suggest you read the book before you watch this video. It is a story that is best experienced for yourself, so read it for yourself first. And then finally, before we get into the video, like the warning said at the beginning of this video, this is a splatterpunk book, so there's a lot of disgusting and disturbing things in it. This one in particular has a lot of child violence and child death. That is the biggest trigger warning I can give for this book. However, there is blood and gore, incest, severe child abuse, and a very small amount of animal violence. So once again, if you're sensitive to any of those, please skip this. I've also been told by comments this is a tough story for parents in particular due to the child violence. So, last warning. Let's get into the summary. We open on a rainy day on a playground. How fitting. We see a woman named Caroline holding a leash with a child named Donnie on it. Like for a dog. I have seen parents that use a leash before, actually. However, in the distance, a big monster of a man watches her with contempt. This is Rock. He sits there and he seems upset about this woman holding her child like this with the leash while she smokes a cigarette. The child has to get up to the swing and motions for his mom to come push him. His mom reluctantly gets up and yells at him that he has to do some of the work, she can't just push him. While she's doing this, she maliciously yanks the leash while the child is at the apex of the swing and he falls backwards. She yells at him and chastises him. Rock thinks to himself that this child isn't a dog. Rock then holds a brochure in his pocket that says Helping Hearts, a charity that helps low-income families with children. He was instructed to only grab adults with more than one child, but he figures that this one will be better than nothing. They are already short a few kids in the charity, so this one will have to do. The kid, who is named Donnie, looks to be about 6, and strangely, despite the fall being pretty large and him landing on his face, he didn't even cry or wince. He just got up and looked like he had no emotion at all. Rock figures that this boy is abused by his mother. After the stunt he just saw and the fact that he didn't even cry at such a large fall, he has to have some incredible pain tolerance. And in addition to that, he didn't even react when his mother screamed at him, which made no sense at such a young age unless he's completely used to it. That doesn't even take into account the leash that wasn't just to make him stay close, it was a literal metaphor for his mother's grip on him. Rock, as angry as he was at the mother and her son, goes up to the mother with the flyer for the charity. We then cut to a husband and a wife driving in a car to pick up their 3 kids. This is Tom, a mild-mannered man that is very cautious, and his wife Molly, who is more outgoing. They are talking about how someone offered them and their children to go to a new state-of-the-art playground. It would be a testing phase for new playground equipment, and this charity would give them $3,000 for their time. Then on top of it, they might choose their city to implement a new playground free of charge. Molly is super gung-ho about it, but Tom's a little anxious about this charity. However, after a little deliberation, he decides that although he is nervous about his children playing on new state-of-the-art equipment, the family really needs the money. So he reluctantly agrees with his wife. It's only for a few hours of their time anyway. The charity is run by a Geraldine Borden, a philanthropist in the New England state area. So this has to be legit. The couple continue talking about how they're going to surprise their kids when they get to where they're going, and they're going to bring them to this playground immediately. We then cut again to a different family. This time, a father named Greg and a son named Kip are sitting in a van. Greg whips a new baseball glove at Kip, saying that it's all oiled up and ready for him. It's super high quality. Kip half-heartedly says, "Hey, thanks, Dad." But Greg is having none of that. Greg snaps at him and saying that he should be more thankful than that. He buys him a nice glove and spends all his free time with him, and Kip can only sort of thank him? Greg then slams his hand on the dashboard to get Kip's attention. Greg asks if Kip wants to fuck around or if he really wants to go pro in baseball. Kip says he does want to go pro, but his father yells back that he should fucking act like it. Greg takes a sip of a beer from his car, which I feel like says something about Greg's character that he's drinking and driving, but whatever. And Kip looks at his dad depressively. His dad then goes into a depressive yet still a little angry rant about how if he were Kip's age again, he would have given anything to have a dad like he was, one that actually cared about his dreams. Greg says he could be out there enjoying life, but instead he's training Kip, which in my opinion makes it sound like he doesn't want to help his son, which after that he confirms it by saying that after Kip makes it big and is a millionaire baseball star, he will take care of his dear old pop, won't he? Because he helped them so much. Anyway, they both get out of the car and they see the oldest of Greg's sons, Bobby.
Dang it, Bobby.
Bobby is skateboarding and doing some impressive stuff on it, and he winces and says good morning to his dad. His dad, however, doesn't reciprocate his oldest son's warm greeting. He just laughs at him and says that skateboarding is useless and will never be a sport. He can't make money off skateboarding, so why bother even do it? That's not very nice, Greg, is it? But on top of the berating about skateboarding, he asks his son if he's fat and fucking stupid. Which, I mean, seems horrible. Greg then takes Kip's hand and leads him away from Bobby, hoping that Bobby's loserness doesn't rub off on Kip. Kip, however, mouths the words, "I'm sorry," to Bobby. Despite his dad being a piece of shit, the two of them actually have a pretty decent relationship, because after all, they both have the same shit dad. Then we get to see the other two children of Greg. Tanya, an athletic girl, and CJ, Greg's pride and joy. CJ is good at everything. Tanya wants to be on the swim team and she's talking to her mom about it, but her mother wants her to be a cheerleader instead. After a ton of deliberation, her mom, Lacey, makes her daughter cry, but makes her stop by saying she'll talk to Greg about going on the swim team, which makes Tanya a little bit more happy. Tanya then gives her mother a slap bracelet. You know, the ones that like will straighten out and then can be slapped on your wrist to make a little bracelet. Her mother thinks it's stupid, but slowly starts fidgeting with it and starts to love the gift. CJ is in his room reading a comic book and looks out of his window to see his dad and Kip playing catch. Greg is being horrible as usual to Kip and calling him a sissy like his older brother. If he wants to get better, he has to practice. Kip complains that CJ and Bobby don't have to be out here playing catch with their dad, and Greg says that Bobby's useless and CJ is so good that he gets 3 hours to himself on the weekend. Wow, a whole 3 hours. Tanya rushes into CJ's room and says that he has to get ready. They have to go to the playground for the charity. CJ says he completely forgot about that and he's gonna get ready now. Tanya and CJ both lament that they haven't got to play with each other for a while now and they want to go on a seesaw. And this is their opportunity to, so they both are excited. So now we have met all of Greg's family, the Matthews. We have Bobby, the oldest and the skateboarder, then Tanya, the swimmer slash cheerleader, I guess, CJ, the prodigy, and then finally Kip, the new youngest prospect. In addition to that, we have Greg, the asshole, overbearing father, and Lacey, the overbearing mother. But that is everything from the Matthews for now. The next chapter is about Rock, that big guy from the beginning, and Geraldine herself. You might expect this philanthropist old lady to be really nice, but no. She straight up berates Rock, asking him how many children they were supposed to have in this little experiment. Rock says 9, and then once again she verbally berates him, because there's only 8. She says that if she wasn't barren, she would have had a real son, and not like this fucking hulking excuse of a man named Rock. You might wonder why Rock doesn't just, like, fight back. He's like 6'7", 220 pounds of muscle. He doesn't have to take this, right? But like Donnie before, Rock is leashed in a way. Maybe not physically, but emotionally. Rock was an orphan and Geraldine adopted him. Although yes, she abused him, no one else would even give Rock the time of day before all of that. Yes, she abuses him, but Rock mistakes this abuse for caring in some way. He hasn't belonged anywhere, and maybe if he goes along with this charity plan, he will feel like he belongs. I like Rock a lot. In fact, he's by far my favorite character in this book. I imagine him to look like Gonta from Danganronpa V3, and I don't know why. Anyway though, through the berating, another character comes in the room. An old man with a German accent. This is Fuchs, or Fox. I really don't know how to pronounce it, but I'm going to assume it's Fuchs. Fuchs asks what is wrong with Geraldine. She says that there's only going to be 8 children now instead of 9 because of Rock's useless ass. Fuchs wonder why does that even matter? Isn't 8 enough children for this? Geraldine snaps back that 9 was the number of children her mother had, and she wanted to be just like her mother just for one day. She had Rock, but he was adopted, and useless at that. She was horribly upset that these peasants had something that, despite all of her wealth, she could never have. Children. Geraldine thinks that these low-income families don't even deserve children, as she doesn't get to have them, so why should these peasants be allowed to? Fuchs says that they should be grateful that Rock even got 8, useless as he is. Geraldine finally agrees and tells Rock to go to a room so she can dress him properly for this charity event, and not in these shabby clothes like he's in now. Finally then, we are introduced to our last 3 characters. Tom and Molly, the 2 good parents from earlier, are now driving up to the Borden estate. Their 3 kids, Isaac, Sam, and Sadie, are in the back seat. Sadie and Sam are teasing Isaac, and Tom threatens to turn this car around right now if they don't stop. Sam and Sadie aren't twins, but they are both exactly alike and look alike. Sadistic and mean. But they're just spoiled little girls. They aren't actually evil or anything, they're just young spoiled brats. Isaac, their older brother, is quiet and nerdy. Wears glasses. You know the kind of guy. Overall, the ages of the kids, not just Tom and Molly's, but Greg's too, and Donnie, range from about 14 to 6. Ages perfect for a playground. Tom's family gets up to the giant castle gate and rings the intercom. He says that his name is Tom Grimley and he's here with his family for the charity event. Fuchs rings out from the other side and says if the door is open, they are welcome to come in. The lady of the estate will be down to meet them in a couple minutes. You might say that despite the emotional abuse that Geraldine has showed to her son and Greg's horrible parenting, that this book isn't too bad yet. Well, this next chapter is going to remedy that. Rock and Geraldine are in her room. Geraldine takes off his clothes to dress him, and she says that he smells really bad. He needs a shower or something. Rock looks down at his red, inflamed skin, where Geraldine had previously branded him with a cow brand. 4 simple letters. M-I-N-E. Mine. Geraldine had branded him when he was just 13 years old after he looked at the maid. It might have been a sexual look, but it also might have just been a passing glance. Either way, Geraldine would make sure that Rock never felt that way about anyone ever again. She murders the maid and made Rock watch. She then branded him, and Fuchs watched absent-mindedly from the corner as she did it. Rock snaps back to reality when Geraldine tugs his hand to the bed as he is naked. She isn't doing this out of some twisted sense of love for Rock, mind you. It's purely for dominance. In Geraldine's mind, any sexual thought Rock has ever had will never happen again. Her bony hip cracks as she tells her adopted son to get to work. She would sparsely shower or bathe, as she believed she needed to preserve her natural oil, so she stinks too. Hey, so you know where this is going, right? I don't want to talk about this, but Here we go. The ranted smell of her genitalia makes Rock almost puke as she makes him eat her out. It's really graphic, but yeah, just incestuous stuff between an old lady and her adoptive son. But wait, there's more in the next chapter. Hooray. This next chapter explains the origins of the perverse thing Geraldine was about to do. She goes into a room near her bedroom, which is completely lined with mirrors all over the place, with dildos stuck all over them. As she does things to herself, she thinks about her mother. She remembers how she saw her mother having sex with a man when she was very young, and how she was enamored by her butt. She would try and get close to her mother as possible her entire life, like play wrestling and things of the like. Until one day she... Dear God, why am I reading this? Until one day she found her mother had to leave in a hurry one morning, and forgot to flush the toilet. She used the fecal matter to pleasure herself, thinking in her mind that it was her mother, and then eats it. When her mother lied on her deathbed many years later, Geraldine had to do something, just once, to her mother. So she slipped off the oxygen mask of her mother and smothered her with her butt, killing her. However, she was on an oxygen mask, so the doctors just figured she stopped breathing. Down the line, she had Fuchs do some experimenting on her over and over to try to make her fertile, but she could never become that way. She was infernal, so she could never become like her mother. However, in a way, she was now in the place of her mother now, and she didn't have a child to enact her horrible fantasies on. So this was her recompense to the world. All the money in the world couldn't have bought her a daughter to play out her little fantasy with. As she looked in the mirrors, she thought to herself that she looked just like her mother. So in a way, she was seeing her mother do this in the mirrors in a way, which is so wrong. She finishes and gets dressed with Rock, and they go downstairs to meet their guests. Hey, just so you're aware, Rock doesn't like this either. He is like disgusted and like wants to puke the whole time. Downstairs in the front yard, Greg and his family are waiting. He was angry it was taking so long, and he let his kids just play tag or something. He tries to think about something positive about all of his children for a change, and he does, and he could think of something for everybody but Bobby, who he only says that at least he's not gay. If you didn't hate Greg before, here you go. Lacey kept slapping the slap bracelet on her arm, and Greg gets annoyed and says that there's an urban legend that one of those once snapped and killed someone once. Lacey laughs it off and gets angry at Tanya for playing tag with the boys. She doesn't want Tanya being dirty or tomboyish, she wants her to be a cheerleader just like her. Greg, for once, says that it doesn't matter if she's playing with them, as long as she's being competitive about it. Just then, from the long driveway, Tom and his family step out of the car. I guess they were late too. Geraldine comes down and introduces herself and Fuchs, as well as her quote-unquote butler, as she calls Rock. Geraldine is putting on a very nice and friendly old woman act here instead of her normal, disgusting personality. Greg impatiently asks her what took her so long and is overall very rude. They all have a long speech about one of the children still not being here yet, and that's why she waited, but they decide to proceed anyway. However, in a whisper, Geraldine tells Rock to leave the gate open until the last child arrives, and then turn on the electric fence after so no one can escape. Bobby impatiently bursts out, "Where the hell is the playground?" Greg turns around and then, quote, shoots laser beams at the most disappointing sperm he's ever unleashed. Which, although I hate Greg, that kind of is a very funny line. They all go inside, and Geraldine makes sure that no one mentioned to anyone that they were going to be here today, as they did sign NDAs and gag orders. Greg impatiently wonders why they should even do that, as who cares about some new playground equipment? Geraldine says that it matters to her, and they continue. Obviously, they didn't tell anyone because Geraldine's gonna do something to them here. She continues down and says that the children and the adults are going to be separated. The kids will be in the playground and playing, while the adults get to watch from the observation room. Greg doesn't see a problem with this, but Tom does. He worries about the safety of the kids. Geraldine says not to worry, the equipment is very safe. In addition to this, she will be increasing the amount that both families get for this by an extra $1,000. Tom is still uneasy, but his family needs the money, so he agrees. They continue through the estate until they get to the playground, which is locked. Geraldine asks once again if everything is in order, and everyone agrees to this. Tom once again says he doesn't know about this. It looks like an ordinary playground, maybe a bit bigger, but the only weird thing is a giant slide in the back of the playground. It is so tall that they can hardly even see the top. In addition to that, the slide leads into the ground, which is obviously not normal. Geraldine says that the slide is not actually operational, it's just for aesthetic purposes. It works and all, but there was no need for it. She then says that of all the kids she was testing for this experiment for her charity, whichever set of kids plays the hardest will win the playground for their city. Greg pipes up and asks if this is a competition. Geraldine pauses, but then kind of agrees that it is, which is all Greg needs to hear. He goes to his kids and tells them to go hog wild, because if there's a competition to be had, his family was going to win. Tom once again wonders if this is even safe. Greg then calls him a pussy and tells him to just let the kids play. He then looks at his son Isaac and says that Isaac looks like a dandelion and no one would be scared or like him, and he's just like Tom, his dad. Tom then finally gets in Greg's face. Geraldine calms everyone down, however, and by that I mean she gets Rock to step in between the two fathers. She says that when Tom was a kid, did he have more fun when the parents were around when he played, or did he have more fun when they weren't around? This finally makes sense to Tom, who agrees, but asks how long this is going to take. Greg then once again tells him to grow a pair, but Tom ignores him. Geraldine says that this will only take about 4 hours. With that, Tom finally agrees. The kids all enter the playground, and as Isaac is the last one to enter, Geraldine shoos him in, laughing to herself as she does. Isaac is smart and he realizes something is off here. Everyone else, however, spreads out, and the parents leave their kids. Geraldine takes the parents without their children up an elevator into a room with a bunch of TVs. On these TVs, all the children could be seen playing in the playground. The parents are seated in these big metal chairs, and Geraldine asks them to partake in a meditation exercise before things begin. Greg says it's her money, so he doesn't care. They all sit down, and Geraldine tells them to put their head all the way back against the cushion of the chair. Everyone does so, and Geraldine guides them through a guided meditation session. However, someone doesn't listen. Lacey, Greg's wife, accidentally drops her slap bracelet while she's playing with it. While everyone else is meditating with their heads against the back of the chair, Lacey bends down to pick up the slap bracelet. Then, without warning or ceremony, metal claws snap from the neck area of the chairs they were in and lock all of their heads in place, like that scene in Clockwork Orange where he's strapped to the chair against his will. Only, if you remember a few seconds ago, Lacey bent down to pick up the bracelet. Only these chairs were not built with safety in mind, so the claws meant to keep their heads in place looking at the TVs clamp down on Lacey's neck with such force it tears the flesh from the front of her neck and opens a lethal gash around her neck, nearly decapitating her. Things are now finally kicking off, huh? Everyone is splashed with an explosion of blood, and everyone begins to freak out, most of all Greg, asking Geraldine what the fuck she's done. Geraldine, finally letting the mask slip, shows her true colors to the parents, saying that if Lacey stood still, this wouldn't have happened. Then Geraldine picks up the slap bracelet and slaps it back on Lacey's arm, saying, "You dropped this," which is super corny. But this book has more than one of these cheesy lines, but it kind of adds to the charm of it almost. There's a line later near the end of the book that is so cliche and cheesy that it made me laugh, but I love it. Rock watched from the room where all the children were. He envied them very heavily, and he hated Geraldine for the years of abuse, but he knew nothing else. He liked to watch them play, but he felt left out. His rage is interrupted by a doorbell ringing over and over and over. Rock leaves and answers the door. It's Caroline and Donnie, the mother and the child from the first chapter. Donnie, stone-faced as ever, and his negligent mother were standing there. Rock invited them in, and Caroline barked orders at Donnie. Rock felt something strange then. He remembered earlier when he saw all the woman did to this little boy Donnie. He felt a connection to Donnie. They were the same. Both were tied to a proverbial leash to their mothers, suffering abuse. Rock had suffered 34 years of it. Could he see another child become just like he is, used as a weapon to commit evil like this? Just as he's about to snap out of it, Caroline snaps at Donnie, saying if she feels the leash move ever again, there's going to be trouble. Although Rock didn't even see the leash move then at all. She just lied to keep control and fear over Donnie. They walk forwards and Donnie slips and scrapes his knee. Most boys his age would cry, but Donnie didn't even react, which was much more telling than anything else. Rock thought for a second through his rage that both of them had to die anyway. Why not now for the mother? Rock quickly slipped off the hook from the leash on Donnie, and before Caroline could even react, Rock wrapped the leash around her neck. Caroline tried to struggle, but she couldn't. She took her lit cigarette and tried to use it to burn Rock, but Rock was used to being burned by hot things, and this didn't affect him the way that she thought. Instead of stopping, Rock was brought back to the time where he was branded, and was now more enraged than ever. He took her head and then repeatedly smashed it into the corner of the step of the mansion. She was wearing glasses, and now they were embedded into her face skin. This wasn't enough for Rock, though. He saw himself in Donnie, and he was going to make sure that Donnie didn't suffer the same fate as Rock did. And he unleashed his rage onto the already dead woman by flipping her over and repeatedly smashing his hands into her face over and over, until it sounded like he was just punching a puddle. He turned to Donnie after all this, and like always, Donnie wasn't crying. He just stared blankly at his dead mother. Back in the control room, Geraldine explains to the remaining parents what is going on. None of the parents really listen, as one of them just got nearly headless nicked, but she says there's a button on the seat's collars that will allow each of them to speak to their children one time through this entire ordeal that is about to happen. She explains that she is basically going to be playing Saw with them, like the movie Saw, but with kids. The parents can speak and give them hints once each with the collar they have on their neck. Whoever makes it through the trials will get to see their parents once more, but after, she will kill all the parents anyway. When asked why she is doing this, she eventually gets frustrated and asks them what makes them so sure that these are their children. Not understanding, Molly says because she saw them come out of her. Geraldine agrees and then asks what else. Molly confusedly says that they act like her, which is the answer Geraldine wanted. She looks at the screen and watches the carnage about to unfold. Back with Rock and Donnie, Rock begins to clean Donnie up from the blood of his mother. Donnie strangely seems detached as ever. However, when Rock realizes there's blood near Donnie's armpit because it trickled down there, Rock tried to wipe it up, and Donnie flinches hard. Rock thinks that Caroline must have abused him here somehow, and apologizes to young Donnie. Rock then wonders if what he is doing right now is even right. If he cleans him up and gives him to Geraldine, there's a good chance he'll die from the playgrounds anyway. But if he gets freed, then both Rock will be killed by Geraldine and Donnie will be put into the foster system, which is the same system that allowed Geraldine to adopt Rock and abuse him. So unfortunately, Rock decides it would be better just to hand him over to Geraldine. That way he'll at least have a chance to survive. Which, I mean, like, is flawed logic, because if Donnie survives, then Geraldine will just adopt him. So, in the playground, all the kids are playing around when Bobby comes up to Isaac. He calls him gay and another slur that I'm not going to say, and Kip, who looks up to his big brother, calls him the exact same stuff. They chase him around and bully him a bit, but thankfully, the other one of their brothers, CJ the Prodigy, comes up and tells them both to knock it off. CJ helps Isaac to his feet and gives him his glasses back. CJ understands what his brothers are doing and it's wrong, and seems to be the moral compass of the Matthews family. Just then, Rock comes to the playground gates and lets Donnie in. Sadie and a couple other children come up to him and try to include him and talk to him and stuff, but like always, Donnie is silent. After Donnie gets acquainted for a bit, Rock then comes back with some snarling and mean-looking Dobermans. All the kids look on in horror and wonder what he's doing, talking to themselves that he isn't going to let them loose in the playground, right? As the tension can't get any higher, Rock does just that. He opens the gate and indeed lets the Dobermans trained to kill people loose. Just then, over the loudspeaker, Fuchs tells them that if they don't want to die, get to the big slide in the back. They all consider it, but considering that these people are pretty much trying to kill them, which is even clear to these like 7-year-olds, they rush towards the slide. Isaac hesitates though, and a dog catches up to him and bites him on the arm, and refuses to let go. Every other kid runs past him, however, CJ goes back to try to save Isaac. He pries the dog's jaws off his new friend and somehow pile drivers the dog over a fence? I don't know why he included this in the book, but okay. Remember, CJ's like 10. How did he do that? Bobby yells at his younger brother, telling him just to leave Isaac because he's dead weight anyway. But CJ, being the good kid that he is, pretty much carries Isaac to the slide. Every kid makes it to the safety of the slide for now. Even though Isaac is injured and everyone is horrified, they are all safe. In the control room, Rock explained what happened with Donnie's mom to Geraldine. She smacks him and calls him useless and asks what happened to the dogs. Rock says he locked them up after the ordeal, and Geraldine says to just kill them. They didn't kill any of the children, so the dogs were failures. Despite letting Rock live here, she doesn't tolerate failures, she says. Rock can only apologize while burning with hot anger. Geraldine leaves with Fuchs and tells Rock to watch the monitors and the parents to make sure none of them do anything stupid. Which, I mean, what can they do? They're literally strapped to chairs. Geraldine and Fuchs are going to watch the children from another room. When she leaves, Tom gets an idea. Despite all the hell and horrible things that have just happened, Tom pleads with the giant man that his son needs a doctor after the dog bite and to let them go and they won't tell anyone. Rock clearly is getting abused by the old lady, and Tom can see this and is trying to appeal to his humanity. Rock, however, stays completely silent and watches just like a good boy. They ask why they are doing all this, and Rock says that, well, they're gonna find out soon. In the slide, all the kids are freaking out, rightfully so. CJ goes to Isaac and assesses the bite mark and realizes that he needs to stop the bleeding somehow. So he asks Kip for his undershirt. However, Bobby interjects and asks why it even matters. CJ gets right up in Bobby's face and tells him straight up to stop being a bully because he's not gonna stand for that shit. And he better help out because the only way that all of these kids are gonna get out of here is together. He is taking control of the situation and he's going to make sure they all get out. Bobby once again says to just forget about Isaac. Isaac isn't his brother, Bobby is. So they should be working together and forgetting about everyone that's not a Matthews. Also, Bobby says he should be in charge because he's the oldest. However, after this, everyone but Kip says they want CJ to be the leader. He's clearly got a level head and capable, and he's nice. Bobby, upset with this, just storms off for a minute. Kip gives CJ his undershirt grudgingly and patches Isaac up. They continue and see the top of the stairs to the slide, and there's a sign there that says Playground Rules. They have a little riddle that says keep your head down and don't look when they get to the bottom of the slide. With no indication of what that means at all, they all agree to go down because they have nowhere else to go. The next chapter is just a long story about how Geraldine found Fuchs and how he was a Nazi that was pardoned by the United States and then found by Geraldine. Fuchs's experiments were too cruel even for the Nazis. A lot of the Nazis' experiments were to help advance medical science, and although they were horrible, they did. And they learned things from these disgustingly horrible experiments. Fuchs, however, was a scientist that didn't even contribute to the science part. He was just a sadist through and through. Fuchs and Geraldine get to a room and they start another monitor up and watch the children, and then pop open a bottle of wine to watch the hell about to unfold. While this was going on, the 8 kids were going down the slide. CJ went last, and when he went down, there was a weird burning sensation that would periodically hit the back of his legs. He didn't realize what it was, but eventually he figured out there were razor blades embedded into the slide's plastic. It was slicing all the kids as they went down the very long slide. And when he got near the bottom, a tuft of razor wire was positioned at the top of the slide to catch people off guard at the bottom. If they didn't duck, they would be caught in it. CJ notices this with his quick reflexes and ducks right in time. When he leaves the slide, he is in a colorful room with marbles all over the floor and a ball pit on the edges of the entire room. Before he could get his bearings, though, a loud noise like a gunshot would periodically ring out. Baseball pitching machines were positioned along the edges of the room as well, constantly pitching baseballs at head levels, so everyone had to stay low. He looked around the room and saw everybody was cut up by the slide. There was tons of blood, but it was all superficial wounds. No one got hit that bad other than his older brother Bobby, who was too tall, or maybe too stupid, to duck in time from the razor wire. His arm was completely shredded. They all try to remember through the screams and the cries of the younger of them what the sign at the top of the slide said. It was something about listening and not looking, but they didn't hear anything but the baseball machines going off and the screams of the younger ones. However, Tanya, CJ's sister, suggests that they might as well try to go to the end of the hallway and listen better. Under the giant pink neon sign that says exit. Yeah, that's not suspicious or anything like that. Back in the observation room, Tom and Molly are trying to convince Rock to let them go. They mention how they see good in him. He's not like the woman who treats him like a dog. Rock yells at them to shut up very loudly. They must have struck a nerve by saying that. Rock then glues himself to the monitor and watches Donnie in particular. He feels some sort of strange connection to the boy as he fiddles with the leash he took off him in his pocket. The children continued and asked what Donnie's name was. He doesn't respond. He seems to be completely mute. He doesn't say anything. They tell him to just stay down as they continue. Turning a corner, they see a scarecrow on a pedestal in the ball pit. It has a knife in its hands and a dodgeball for a head. Next to the scarecrow, there is a hangman game sign that says SABHHEHE. It's on the screen right now. It obviously says stab him in the head. But remember, these are kids and they don't get it right away, let alone in this horrible situation, so no one's thinking clearly. They all ponder it, and Sam, the youngest of Isaac's sisters, begins crying. Because honestly, who wouldn't in this situation? She's 7 years old. I'm 25 and I would cry in this situation. She screams that she wants to go home and see her parents, and she runs towards the big pink neon exit sign. They all stay put and ponder the sign, and they just tell Sadie to go get her sister. Sam enters the exit room and Sadie follows, but before Sadie can get there, an explosion goes off. When Sadie finds her sister, she is badly burned. Half of her skin is torn off from her face and she is bleeding heavily. Despite Sam being the one that got blown up, Sadie is the one that cries. She runs to her sister and tries to pull her to safety from the exit room, but like the Saw movies, the ceiling begins lowering, threatening to crush them. The others have noticed now and rushed over too. Isaac rushes in the room without thinking, trying to help his two little sisters, but as they pull, they realize they aren't going to make it. So Isaac makes a very hard executive decision. If they try to pull Sam to safety, all three of them will die. But if they leave Sam behind, who is catatonic and unfortunately nearly dead anyway, the other two might just make it. So Isaac yanks Sadie's arm and they both barely make it to safety. They get out just in time to see the ceiling crush the 7-year-old girl's skull. Blood pours out of her eye sockets and jaws until it crumbles. The only thing left of her is her left arm. Sam is now the first of the dead children. Fuchs and Geraldine are zooming in on the monitor and laughing and enjoying themselves in the room, toasting their glasses all celebratory and shit. Just gross behavior. They mention that no child has ever even made it past the second playground, but this time, they have 8 instead of the singular test children, so the odds are in their favor to make it past at least 2 playgrounds. As the other children were trying to focus and not be sick from the events that just happened, Sadie was gripping what remains of her dead sister, crying. Tanya, despite crying and feeling disgusted, was still trying to figure out the hangman game, and because she's smart, she figures it out. Stab him in the head. She tells the rest of them, and CJ volunteers to jump from the main part of the room to the platform where the scarecrow is. He steels himself as he has no idea what's in the ball pit, and he jumps. Unfortunately though, he slips and falls into the ball pit, and they pop. They aren't balls, but balloons. CJ freaks out because there's a rush of pain to all of the cuts on his body, and he begins to panic. But he realizes it's just salt in the balloons. It hurts horribly, yes, but it doesn't really pose any real danger. He gets up and tries again. This time he manages to do it and stabs the dodgeball and pops out a key, only for fire ants to get spread all over. They grab the key and quickly rush themselves to find a keyhole in the neon sign, and they find a door that opens up and they walk through it to the second playground. Back in the observation room, Molly and Tom are rightfully reeling. Their child just was killed in front of them. Molly is wailing and crying to Rock to let her go and calling him a monster. The child never even had a chance. Rock remained glued to the screen, seemingly uncaringly, but the room was dark and the parents couldn't see a horrible look of guilt on Rock's face. He just wanted to be a part of something. He has now fully realized the weight of his actions. However, he bites his lip and tries to swallow his guilt. Maybe, just maybe after this, Geraldine would accept him. Tom is just shocked and can't even speak. However, Greg, who has been clutching the hand of his dead wife this entire time, watched the child die too, and he breaks. Or rather, he awakens anew. He thinks to himself, shit, better their kid than mine. Another reason to hate Greg. Great. Tom and Molly try to reason with Greg to help them reach Rock. Though Greg does the least correct thing possible in the situation and says that there is no way he is going to help. Everyone in this mansion is going to die anyway. Besides, even if they do get out, how are they going to get to their kids? They're all fucked. Greg then strangely looks at the screen and smiles. Even if they will all die, the Matthews are going to die as winners. His kids are going to make it to the end, so they can die as winners. As this fight is happening between Greg and Tom, all the monitors go dark. Rock gets confused and leaves as the squabbling continues. He tries to find Geraldine and Fuchs in the other room. Geraldine is immediately steamed that Rock left the parents alone. What if they got loose? She drunkenly throws her wine glass at his face and it shatters, leaving shards of glass in Rock's chin. Rock then tells her what's wrong, with the rage building inside him. Fuchs calls him an idiot and says that the cameras are just transitioning to the second playground. Nothing is wrong. Rock apologizes and gives a smile. Geraldine says he's a failure and he has nothing to be happy about, so stop smiling and go back to the parents. Rock does so, wondering if he will ever get to celebrate anything like those two are celebrating right now. In the second playground, they reached a stone floor with platforms around a deadly far drop. It was a bunch of hopscotch squares over a seemingly endless drop into the abyss. In addition, there is live cows suspended above them and meat grinders on either side. This is like cartoonishly evil and Saw-like, but whatever. The playground rules say just to play hopscotch and get to the other side. A neon sign says heaven above it with crude chalk drawings of angels being decapitated on the other side. Their goal was to get to it. CJ finally takes some cloth from the scarecrow and patches Bobby up. Bobby winces in pain as he does this, and Kip has to watch as his big brother and idol cries and winces. Each time he sees his big brother wince, a little part of him dies. He's never seen Bobby wince before, let alone cry. In the observation room, Tom asks Rock why his daughter had to die. Why do any of these innocent children have to die? Rock quietly says that they didn't follow the rules of the playground. Not even sure himself. Tom, now angry, asks where in the rules it says that his daughter couldn't go to the fucking exit. She got literally exploded and crushed. How is that fair? Rock didn't agree with him or disagree with him. He just stared at the screen thinking. Tom just asks Rock to help them. That's all they want. Just then, the Blight in the room pipes up and says, of course Tom would need an advantage. He wants help with the Matthews. They don't need an advantage in anything. They'll win fair and square without any help. Molly says to just forget Greg. He's lost it. Greg says that that's unlikely. No one will forget a Matthews. At the end of this, he and his family will be standing tall at the end, while Tom's family will all be dead. And then he chuckles. He is literally almost as bad as Geraldine. He then calls Tom's son a homophobic slur, because of course he does, and Tom and Molly wonder if they should use their one chance to talk to their kids, but there is no reason to right now. Comforting them will not help them in this situation. It might actually even hurt them. They need to save it for when they learn something and can actually help them through one of these playgrounds. Tom then asks why Rock is bleeding from his face. Unable to get a good answer, he presses more, saying that Rock doesn't have to be like Geraldine. This touches a nerve, and he turns around and yells that he is not like her. He whispers to himself once again that he is not like her, as if he's trying to convince himself. Geraldine and Fuchs watched from the other room with great interest. Geraldine taking a particular liking to Tanya, the Matthews girl. Tanya was smart and strong. She's cried a few times, but who wouldn't in this situation? We then hear her ultimate plan if any of them survive. If any of the kids survive, they will all get to say goodbye to the parents, and then Geraldine will kill the parents in front of the child. And then she will adopt whoever is left. Geraldine has found herself almost rooting for Tanya, like in a sports game, betting on the life of a child. She reminded Geraldine of herself at that age almost, reinforcing the thing that Molly said earlier, that the reason she knows that she's her child is because she acts like her. The children discuss what to do next. Bobby says that no way any of them can cross this hopscotch at all. CJ rightfully points out that the last time someone didn't follow the rules, they died. Bobby then says that, well, if she wasn't stupid, she wouldn't have died. Isaac rightfully reacts to this, and Bobby once again calls him a dandelion. As they ponder what to do, Donnie, without notice, just starts going. He goes to one platform to the next over and over until he makes it all the way to the heaven sign. All the kids are relieved that he made it, but then Donnie does something unexpected. He hops back, like as if it was a normal hopscotch game. And as he starts doing this, the cows above him are starting to get close to the buzzsaws. If he doesn't stay put at the exit, the blood from the cows will explode and blind him, and Donnie will fall to his death. CJ, quickly jumping into action, starts jumping himself to meet Donnie halfway. He picks him up and carries him to the other side. But before the others can even celebrate this feat of athleticism CJ just demonstrated, the ceiling once again begins to descend. They don't have a lot of time to wait and ponder what to do. Isaac goes first, but he struggles to find the nerve to do so. So Sadie goes and goes through flawlessly. Isaac finally then goes with Kip and Bobby right behind him. He goes, and right before he can get to the end, the cows above him explode. Blood explodes out, obscuring Isaac's vision. He panics, but takes a few seconds to recompose himself and makes the last jump and makes it. However, that split second of regaining composure would cause the blood to hit Kip as well behind him. Unfortunately, Kip doesn't steal himself the way that Isaac did. He slips and tumbles into the meat grinder below, his bottom half ripping away from his top half. Bobby screams for his brother, but with a surprising amount of grace he got from skateboarding all these years, he hops across the blood-covered platform and makes it too. CJ rushes to his brother to hug him, but before he can, Bobby pushes CJ away and runs with a raised fist to sucker punch Isaac in the face. Everyone is shocked and they try to pull Bobby off Isaac. Sadie pounds her fists into the big boy's back, but he backhands her away. Bobby says that Isaac purposely took so long to get Kip killed. Finally, CJ pulls his big brother off and puts his fists up. He asks if Bobby wants to fight right now because he knows that CJ, despite him being a lot younger, will win the fight, or if he wants them to get out of there. Isaac obviously did not get Kip killed on purpose. Bobby says that he's taking the other kid's side and not the Matthews side here. CJ rightfully says there is no side here, they all just want to leave. In the other room, Geraldine watches. She loves that Tanya was fighting on CJ's side, on the side of good or whatever. It makes her horny. Fuchs checks on Rock and the others while everyone is teary-eyed. Even Rock. Surprisingly, Greg, Kip, who just died's father, was just staring at the screen with excitement, not even batting an eye that his youngest son just died. Even Geraldine and Fuchs wonder why he's just smiling at the screen after his youngest son just died with excitement. Fuchs comedically suggests that maybe he's a psychopath. They both laugh at the notion as they sip their wine and children die in the other room. Okay, just to check in here at the halfway point, I have this chart here if you're lost. Here we can see all the adults who are alive, that being Tom, Molly, Greg, Rock, Fuchs, and Geraldine, and then the kids that are still alive, that being Isaac, Sadie, CJ, Donnie, Tanya, and Bobby. And spoilers, there is still several children and adults that aren't going to make it out of this. So let's keep going. The chapter after the last one is really weird because nothing really happens in it. No one dies or anything, but it is another trial, so I will zoom through it. It's a dark room where some kids have to jump from these spring riders and some from a giant swing. If you don't know what a spring rider is, it's this thing on screen. But everyone makes it out, but it's close. Once again, it's really weird that it's here. It's sort of just filler almost, but I guess it's important, so. In the observation room, Tom and Molly, although horrified for their children's safety, are doing their best to break through to Rock still. They say that if he gives them just a small hint to tell their children, he won't get in trouble. Although Rock sees through this. Greg, however, yells at them to pipe down. The next game is about to start. Seemingly completely not even caring about Kip at this point. Tom asks what the hell is wrong with him. His kid just died. He's not ever coming back and he will never see him again. Doesn't that bother him? Greg then pretty much, without realizing it, spills his whole philosophy and story, saying, "Dead is dead. It's not like anyone ever gave a shit about me. Didn't need him anyway. Fuck him. Taught him myself how to play ball, taught myself how to drive, taught myself how to pearl girls. It's all a game. Life's just one big game, and I was born ready to play. Which is an interesting philosophy, and it gives a little insight to why he is the way he is. It doesn't change that he's a massive piece of shit still, but at least it's a reason why he's a massive piece of shit. Tom says that that makes no sense. His son is dead. D-E-A-D, dead. Greg then finally shows some slight amount of emotion, saying, yeah, Kip is dead. Dead because of Isaac. If Isaac just jumped, this wouldn't have happened. Echoing what Bobby said. Go figure, they're father and son, I guess. Tom disagrees, but Greg says it's fine. He doesn't have to admit that Isaac got him killed. Because if they're gonna play dirty, so will Greg. That's not ominous or anything. While this is all going on, Rock finds himself glued to the screen. Not because he is so interested, but he wants to see Donnie. He wants to make sure that Donnie is safe. He comes to a realization. He cares about Donnie. The children made it to the next playground. This one is simple. This is a long thing of monkey bars over a giant pit filled with snakes and broken glass. Simple. Just as they are about to start, a voice rings out. It's Molly. She used her one lifeline to talk to the kids. She says, do not go across this. The bars are all slimy. Anyone that tries to go across them that way will fall and die. Sadie doesn't really listen and just calls out to her mom that she wants to go home through broken tears. Molly wants to comfort her, but she can't, as it will cause more problems than it will help. The voice cuts off. With this hint, they all have to climb over the monkey bars, they realize. Bobby hates this idea as he has to help everyone up and get them to safety, and he just straight up refuses at first. However, CJ points out that this literally will not work any other way. If he doesn't, no one can pull him up, which makes Bobby, reluctantly, help out. They all get across the gap, no problem. In her room, Geraldine wonders how Molly could have ever even known that the bars were slippery. She wonders if Rock told her, but Fuchs says that it's highly unlikely that he did. You can see the bars are really shiny on the monitor even. She probably just saw it. Geraldine is unsure, but she closely watches Tanya and then, for fuck's sake, her panties get wet. Why am I doing this? Rock in the other room thinks to himself that he did not let the information about the monkey bars slip because Tom and Molly had gotten to him, but just because it was the right thing to do. For Donnie and the other kids. The more he thinks about it, the more he hated what Geraldine was doing. Look what following orders from her had gotten him. Glass in the face. He stares at Tom and Molly thinking that these people have no money, no status, nothing like Geraldine, but they have hearts. Greg, however, is also like that, and look at that asshole. Rock ponders on what to do while fidgeting with the leash in his pocket. The kids enter the fourth to last playground, and it is actually the image on the cover of the book. A slide over a pit. However, this slide isn't normal, and it isn't even as safe as the one with the razor blades from earlier. This saw trap-like contraption has literal buzz saws coming up and down from the slide, so you have to time it right to make it down the slide. Isaac is smart and he takes his shoe off, covers it with the sock, and throws it down the slide to find the exact timing. They aren't the same weight, but it's about the same. The kids make sure Donnie gets down safe first because they have no idea if he's even following any of this, as he hasn't spoken or looked like he had any emotions at all anyway. He makes it down with a few seconds to spare. One by one, every kid makes it down the slide unscathed. CJ, Tanya, and Isaac, just Bobby and Sadie remain at the top. Sadie cries and cries about her being scared, which is absolutely valid, but Bobby is getting impatient with this. Just then, a crackle, and Greg's voice booms out of the room. He tells Bobby that he knows he hasn't been the best dad to him, but maybe that skateboarding stuff is gonna come in handy right now. He says find something or someone to skate down the slide on to safety. If he has a buffer between his feet and the razor blades, he won't hit the razor blades. He finishes by saying, do not disappoint him. These kids killed Kip, remember? This is only fair. The speaker then gets cut off. CJ, Isaac, and Tanya yell, scream, and plead with Bobby not to do it. Do not listen to Greg. Bobby, though, has been desensitized by the violence. He smirks, takes the knife from the first room, and plunges it into young Sadie's back. He grabs her ankles and slides down the slide on her. The saw blades cut her to ribbons through her face, her eyes, everything. By the time she gets to the bottom, she is little more than hamburger meat. Rock even cringes about this from the other room while Molly is screaming for her second lost child. Rock can hear her vocal cords tearing from the strain of the screams. Greg, however, is cackling and saying himself, "That a boy, Bobby." Rock is really beginning to detest Greg, but the feeling of detest worries Rock. Because if what Greg is doing is making him feel such hatred and sickness towards him, what about the evils he's done for Geraldine? That would make him a huge hypocrite. Tom is shaking in his chair, trying to get out, saying he's gonna kill Greg. Rock has never seen the mild-mannered Tom show so much hate before. Tom asks if this is what they wanted, children to die. Rock ponders that. Where is the line if children are dying? He could only say he was doing this out of fear for Geraldine for so long. In her room, Geraldine is celebrating with Fuchs over this exciting turn of events. The children are literally turning each other and literally stabbing each other in the back. Geraldine almost cries because she's so happy, but she's also a little sad because there's only 5 children left: Bobby, CJ, Tanya, Isaac, and Donnie. She is so excited that Tanya might make it though. When Bobby got off the meat that was formerly a child, everyone rushes him, but he pulls out a knife and says if anyone else wants it, they are very well welcome to try to fight him, pointing it at them. Isaac says this isn't over. CJ, however, is full on about to just fight Bobby and take his challenge on. Bobby then says CJ is just jealous that he couldn't please Dad like that he finally got a turn to please Dad and CJ couldn't steal it from him this time. CJ bursts out and says that he doesn't care about Dad's opinion. He hates baseball, he hates Greg. Bobby shakenly says he's just saying that, clearly somewhat surprised. Bobby drops his guard and they all get into the next elevator. Isaac almost doesn't go with them, but if he doesn't, he dies here. So he has no choice. He gets in the elevator and unfortunately has to be close to Bobby yet again. They get to the next floor and it is a really old and rickety looking merry-go-round. It's all corroded and wooden. Under it, a vat of acid is bubbling. They don't even have the chance to think about it this time as the ceiling is once again coming down on them. They all get on as fast as they can and by the luck of the draw, Isaac gets sat right next to Bobby on it. However, Bobby is on the inside of the carousel and Isaac is on the outside. As the machine spins up and goes faster and faster, Bobby can brace himself against the wall, but Isaac cannot. Isaac starts to lose his grip a little, and this is Bobby's cue. He sees the opportunity to further impress his dad now by taking out another one that is not a Matthews. He takes out the knife again and starts to position it towards Isaac's hands as he's holding on. Though, unfortunately, this angers Tom enough to use his one message. His voice rings out saying, if Bobby does this, he will kill Greg right here, right now. He has him right next to him. He will straight up murder Greg. Bobby stops for a second, fearing about this. But because Greg is so loud and Tom's message was so short, Greg was caught on the mic saying that he knows that it's bullshit and for Bobby to go for it. Well, unfortunately, that's all Bobby needed to hear. He pulls out the knife and starts slicing Isaac's knuckles slowly. CJ yells at him to stop, but if CJ lets go and tries to help, he will be flung off and he will die for nothing. The carousel goes faster and faster to the point of CJ throwing up and it flying backwards and smacking Bobby in the face. This momentary blindness as he finally cuts Isaac's fingers to the bone gives Isaac one last chance. Isaac cannot hold on and is going to die no matter what now. There's no doubt about it. But there's one thing he can do in retribution for his sister. As he flies off the carousel, he flies off and grabs Bobby with his only good hand and dislodges him just enough to make him fly off too. They both fly off into the vat of acid. They try to stand up and it corrodes their skin, burning away their face flesh until they cannot even feel anything as their nerves get fried off. Their knees buckle from the lack of muscle they both now have in their legs and they both fall into the soup, dead. We also get this horrible image, which I believe is the worst one in the book, leaving just 3 kids left: CJ, Tanya, and Donnie. In the control room, Rock quietly looks at Molly and Tom as they lost their last child. But there was no anger like before. No hatred towards Greg. Just silence and despair. It wasn't sadness they now felt, but pure agony of losing everything. I'm not a parent, but losing not one, but all 3 of your children in one fell swoop must be an impossible pain to put into words. Greg, however, just screamed, "Fuck!" just like if an opposing football team would have scored a touchdown. He quickly gets over it though and says, well, at least he took 2 of them with him. This was a turning point for Rock, though. He wondered what he would feel if Bobby just did that to Donnie. He hated Greg for this, but he realized whatever pain he is feeling is felt a millionfold by the Grimleys. He wants Greg dead, but he knew if he outbursts and kills him, Geraldine will come immediately and punish him. Maybe even kill him and all the parents and Donnie too. So Rock quietly waits for his moment in pure anger. As much as CJ and Tanya hate what Bobby has been doing, he was still their brother, and they felt sad that he passed away along with Isaac. But deep down, even though neither of them would ever admit it or even think about it, they were somewhat relieved that Bobby's reign of terror had been cut short. The kids entered the penultimate room, and it's a seesaw. I guess Tanya would get to seesaw with CJ after all, huh? Just not the way they wanted. They sit Donnie down and say he's done enough now. He can rest. This seesaw obviously isn't a normal seesaw though. It looks like there are go-kart chairs on a bar of metal with springs under each seat. Above, there is propellers, like from a plane above each of the seats. If the seat goes too high, it will literally slice their heads off. The rules say that they have to reach 10 to continue. Seems easy enough, but as soon as they start, hooks dig into their armpits. They are trapped on this seesaw. If they try to leave, it will probably rip their skin off, maybe even their entire arms. They start, but they try several times, and no matter how high they get, the score would not go up. Finally, they go within inches, maybe even centimeters of the propeller, and it counts. They breathe a sigh of relief. They only have to do 10 of these. They just have to be very careful. And Tanya and CJ are really in sync. The score goes up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then something happens. Near the bottom of the platform they are on, flames erupt out of the floor. Meaning if they stay on the ground too long, it will expose their legs to literal fire. They continue, and as CJ hits the ground for the first time, it singes his leg hair and burns his ankles. He goes up and Tanya comes down. She can stand it for a few seconds, and then they continue. They get to 8 this way, but when CJ gets to the ground, he starts to get almost sleepy from the pain. He cannot stand it. He has burns all up his legs to the point of not being ever to use his legs again if he continues. Tanya pleads with him just for a few more seconds to let her rest. She cannot stand it anymore. She's in the same boat. CJ can no longer take it and launches off. Just as he does, however, he passes out from the pain. Tanya goes down and can't help but sit in her pain until CJ wakes up, but alas, she can't do it. She launches herself up and CJ plummets to the ground. She barely gets the 10th point and they win, within millimeters. But as she reaches the ground, she tries to stop herself so CJ doesn't get launched into the propellers, but the hooks in her armpits slip. Her body slips and half of her face is exposed to direct flame, burning all her hair off and scalding one of her eyes. Not only this, CJ was launched a few inches too high. CJ has a propeller blade lodged directly in his skull, slicing his brain matter in half. CJ, probably the best of all of them, both physically and emotionally's life is cut short at the age of 10. Horribly though, Tanya can't even think about that because she can't move, and she is face first in a flamethrower pretty much. Donnie rushes into the flame and yanks her off though. Donnie burns his legs doing so, but only slightly, and he saves Tanya's life. Barely. However, Tanya can hardly even stay conscious, and the young Donnie has to drag her into the last playground. Tanya can't walk or even think really, but they still have one playground to go. Geraldine and Fuchs are celebrating, loving that although CJ was fantastic and a leader, he had to go eventually, right? He had to spread himself too thin eventually. However, this is short-lived, as Geraldine is hoping that this last playground, Donnie will somehow bite the dust and Tanya will be the only one remaining. Greg in the monitor room finally sheds a tear. He thinks about his shining star with limitless potential and how CJ is now gone. He hates this, but quickly recovers. He tells his dead wife that they still got one more. The Matthews are gonna win this thing. Rock, burning red with hatred, thinks that Greg represents all that is wrong with the world. He's just like Geraldine without the money. Greg and Molly had all their tears dry up now and just watched devastated. However, they then ask Rock something extremely interesting. He expects them to beg for their lives now that their 3 children were dead, but instead, they beg to save the girl and boy who are left. They don't beg for their own lives. They beg for Tanya and Donnie's. They lost everything, and now they're gonna die too, and they know it. And instead of trying to save themselves, they beg that one of Greg's kids, and one whom they don't even know, now to be saved instead. This finally breaks through to Rock fully. Facing absolute loss of everything, they still think about the other children and not themselves, let alone Greg's child. Rock thinks that he needed Molly when he was younger instead of Geraldine. However, even now, after he effectively helped kill these kids, they are still trying to appeal to his humanity. Molly is still trying to save Rock too. He realizes this, and realizes that Donnie needs a woman like Molly. Even if he wins, Donnie will just be adopted by Geraldine. And Donnie doesn't need a Geraldine. Donnie needs a Molly. The last 2 children enter the final room. It is a rope wall like at a carnival or a gym with a bell at the top. If they can climb this rope wall and ring the bell, they win. There is blocks like for children with letters on them. Tanya gets ready to try to climb this. Somehow, some way, she has to ascend this to win. She has no legs effectively, but she still has arms. She can do this, but just as she's about to start, spears start protruding from the walls over and over. Once again, they're going to have to time this. Tanya steals herself, but Donnie comes up to her with a bunch of letter blocks and spells out, "I can ring the bell." Tanya asks why Donnie hasn't talked this whole time, and if he's sure he can ring the bell. He says with the blocks, "Mama says I talk too much. It's not that I don't talk, I can't." He opens his mouth and points, and with her one good eye, Tanya looks, and Donnie's tongue was literally severed at the base. He can't talk because he has no tongue. He says he can do it though. He doesn't have a choice. He's gonna save them both. And just as he's about to start climbing this rope wall, a voice cracks over the speaker. It's a gruff voice that they've never heard before, saying, "It's over, stop." He's gonna let them out. It is Rock. The book doesn't expressly say this, but I find it almost sweet and poetic that in a way, every parent has now used their voice in the trials. Molly, Greg, Tom, and now Rock has too. Although Rock isn't really Donnie's parent, in a way, this is him trying to become it. Rock takes his hand off the mic, and he understands that even though he has committed atrocities beyond forgiveness, he is going to start being a good person now. Better late than never, I guess. Molly cannot even believe it herself. Their kindness reached him. Rock has changed. Greg pipes up and curses at Rock. He says that they killed his boys, and now he ends the game prematurely too? The Matthews always finish, Greg says. Tom looks at Rock and pleads with him to let them out of the chair so he can fight Greg or even just kill him. But before he can even do that, Geraldine and Fuchs walk in. They say that this is a new low even for a failure like Rock. But Rock wasn't taking these mind games anymore. Geraldine, realizing this change has been made, instructs Fuchs to stop him. Fuchs pulls out a Luger, which is a pistol, and points it at Rock. He tells Rock do not test him, and if he wants to make up for this, he has to kill both the parents and the children right now. Rock, however, does not back down. He puts his huge fingers over Fuchs' old neck and starts breaking it. Though as he does, Fuchs gets a shot off and hits Rock in the arm. But this pain is nothing compared to the torture that these two have put Rock through in the past 34 years. So it doesn't even matter. Fuchs drops the gun and Rock, in rage, smashes the old Nazi's head against the control panel over and over. It short circuits and fries Fuchs' hair, and he continues to do so in his rage, but he stops when white flashes and loud booms ring out. Geraldine picked up the Luger and shoots Rock 3 times and hits him twice in the stomach, and he falls down. Geraldine attempts to shoot him and finish him off, but is out of bullets. Tom realizes this is his chance, and the short circuit had opened his chairs. He takes Molly by the hand and runs after Geraldine. However, Greg lunges at them and attempts to choke Tom out. He is refusing to let Tom get to Geraldine. He wants the kids to finish. As Greg is choking Tom, Molly tries to punch Greg to get him off, but it's impossible. However, just then, Rock gets up and sticks his big finger down Greg's throat. Greg fights and tries to get Rock off, but Rock was too filled with adrenaline and hatred to let go. Even with bullets in his chest, Rock was way stronger than Greg. Now, Greg is strong and athletic, but he is no match for the mountain of a man that is Rock. As he slides his finger down Greg's throat further and further, Greg vomits, but he doesn't even let go until Greg's horrible life finally comes to an end. Rock struggles to get up. Molly tries to help Rock as well as Tom, but realizes Tom's okay and Rock really isn't. She attempts to help Rock and help him get up, but cannot. Molly attempts to try to take some of the clothes lying around and dress Rock's wounds. And as he takes off his clothes, she sees all the horrible wounds and the brand that has been inflicted upon him. And she patches them up, distraught that Rock had to go through all this. However, after everything and her children dying indirectly because of Rock, Molly was still trying to take care of him. Rock gets up and says he has to end this, because if Geraldine is alive, she won't let anyone here leave alive. Rock has a feeling he knows where Geraldine ran to. He stumbles his way to the room of mirrors. The room is open and she never keeps it open without a reason, so she had to be in there. He felt she was so predictable. He walks in, blood still dripping from his wound, and he makes his way to the mirror room, which was open. Rock knew that Geraldine had a rifle in her room as well, and as he went for it, he realized it was gone. However, the mirror room was open still, and he hears her cocking the rifle in the room. She's definitely in there. Rock walks in and hears her. The lights were off, and in the room of mirrors, there is complete darkness as there's no light. He hears her breathing heavily, but Rock was quiet as a mouse despite his giant frame. She came here because of how dark it would be, and this is the only place that she could stand a chance against Rock, because if he can't see her, he can't hit her. However, Geraldine forgot something. Rock built this room for her. He knew the ins and outs of the mirror room. He knew there was a way to get behind the mirrors. He lifted up some of the mirrors and went behind them. He continues to walk and he could hear her breathing right behind the mirror next to him. Just as he notices, she shoots at a different mirror. Glass shatters and scares them both. She yells out, "Remember the words on your chest. You are mine. You will die when I say." Rock then says, "Unless you die first." He bashes his hand through the back of the mirror and the gun falls to the ground and Rock kicks it away. It would be way too quick to kill her with a gun. She cracks her hip on the floor and she pleads with him, saying she always loved him, she just was doing tough love, trying anything to get out of this. She tries one more time and finally, the corniest and best line in the book happens. Geraldine says, "But I'm your mother." And Rock says, "And I'm the motherfucker." Which is so corny, but I'll allow it because it feels very cathartic. Rock smashes her face against the mirrors over and over. He shoves her into the next mirror, then the next mirror, then the next mirror, then the next mirror. He finally gets to the mirror with the dildo on it that we talked about earlier and shoves her bloody face on it over and over, smashing her face against it. However, after he's done, he leaves her on the ground for a second. Her face is literally just pulp, but he can tell she is struggling to breathe, but still alive. Good. Rock is happy she is still fighting for her life. He picks her up one more time, then finds a sharp piece of glass protruding from the floor. And he lifts Geraldine up and takes off her panties one last time and skewers her through her private parts and up to her face with a broken mirror. In a way, she died the way she wanted to, looking at herself, and by extension, her mother, once again. In the other room, Molly wakes Tom up. She tells him that Rock saved him. Rock comes back and tells them that he ended it. But he's bleeding really badly. Too much to live, probably, unless they get him to a hospital right away. However, Rock can only say one thing. "I want to see the kid." They all go together and unlock the gates and let the kids out. Rock can barely move, but he keeps going with blood leaking on the wall he's leaning on. Tanya understands her parents were not perfect, and they're both gone. She cries, but she goes along with Tom and Molly. Donnie tries to calm her down after she realizes that everyone she knows and loves is dead. Her brothers and her parents. However, they all need to hurry and leave and get to a hospital. Tanya's face is half burned off and Rock is dying. Rock gets them all upstairs and can barely get the key into the fence so they can leave. Molly says that Rock needs to go with them so he can live and go to the hospital. He needs to give his account to police as well, but Rock refuses. He knows that he is beyond redeeming at this point. However, before he dies and pays for his crimes, he wants to do something he's never gotten to do in his 34 years. Play on a playground. Molly and Tom leave with the two kids and hopefully go to the hospital for the kids. I originally wanted them to save Rock here, but I feel it's much better with the final chapter that they did not. The final chapter is called Like a Kid Again. Rock barely makes it down to the first playground, barely still alive, but bleeding out. First, he goes to the monkey bars. He's already too big to use them, but he tries and he slips and falls on the ground. He giggles and laughs about it, almost like despite the excruciating pain and the rapidly ending life, he's having fun. He then sees the swing set. He barely manages to get up and get on the swing. He swings softly to himself for a minute, and the bar holding the swing breaks and he falls on his ass. Once again, Rock giggles like a kid. The pain is excruciating, but he's smiling. He gets up one last time with no energy left at all. He gets to the merry-go-round. He spends it with the last of his strength and barely manages to get on. He lies down in the middle and looks at the sky as blood pours out of his stomach. He smiles. An unfamiliar feeling on his face. A genuine smile. The pain he felt wasn't so bad anymore. In different circumstances, he might get used to this pain and have fun like this. As the merry-go-round slowed down, so did Rock. He started getting sleepy and realized, finally, he was happy. That's it. That is Playground. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I really love this book. Unlike the previous book we covered that was horror and splatterpunk, and the ending made me feel empty, which I understand has merit in the genre, but it's a very negative outlook of the world. However, this book, although still disgusting and horrible, I feel says something that in the end is almost perfect. It's not empty, but hopeful. Despite how terrible it is, the ending is very hopeful. Now, I understand what I am about to say is super cringe, and I get that. But I feel it's necessary to explain my feelings about the book. The last book we covered, which I won't name in fear of getting copyright striked by the author again, is extremely gross, negative, sad, and despair-inducing. However, although this book is these things as well, I feel this has a stronger message. I want you to think about how horrible of people in this book are. Some as evil as some of the characters in our previous book even, but in contrast to the message of the last book, which was about the cycle of abuse and how it ruins everybody in the cycle, this almost has a similar message, but a very big difference. It doesn't imply that the cycle of abuse is inescapable. It offers a different solution. Hope. This book implies that although there are horrible, horrible people in the world like Greg, Geraldine, and Fuchs, there are also people like Tom and Molly, who are strong enough to change people like Rock. Strong enough love to break the cycle of abuse. They are bashed over and over with the worst pain imaginable, losing all 3 children to another family, and then in the end they beg, plead with Rock to save one of their children who is the sibling of one who killed the other 2 children, and it broke Rock's cycle of abuse. It gave Rock the power to be a parent to Donnie in a way and save him. Unlike how Geraldine broke Rock, Rock was able to break the cycle because of the love of others who were just as, if not more, broken than him. Another theme you might be able to get in this book is how parents can ruin their children. But like I said in the last point, I think it can be broken by human kindness. So, to end this video, I conclude that Playground is extremely gory and disgusting novel in the splatterpunk genre. Despite this, however, in stark contrast with some of the books in the genre, this book underlies an extremely beautiful emotional depth, and it has become one of my favorite books because of it. Rock's story is something unbelievably beautiful, so thank you all for watching. I love you all, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you for continuing to support me. You are all wonderful.